And it's Sunday Night Live. So,
my goodness.
Good questions that came in, and you shared a lot of history, and I don't know where to start, but hopefully people will just jump in and start asking questions and engaging with you.
sounds good.
So, you got any updates on anything that you want to share with us as we get started?
Yep. In the last 2 weeks, the lid has been ripped off a certain subject ever so dear to so many hearts, and that is the subject of travel versus commerce. And the big ticket item of the day is getting your ticket and having to appear in court. Roughly 2 weeks ago, on a countrywide coordinator call, a certain question was asked and some information was shared that is going to affect every jurisdiction in every state about traffic tickets and who is subject to a traffic ticket. (49 CFR 390.3 capital T). It has to do with whether one is an actual driver or if one is using the roads for enjoyment. So a certain article was written by Anna, and the title to it is Big Hats Off and a Little Addition. It's a large article with about 15 pages of information and case law and constitutional law and relationships. Well, Friday night, hang on for a second. I forgot to mute my phone. So Friday night, what I shared was the education system and the language we're taught takes us squarely down the cattle chute of being a slave, and we have assumptions of what words mean. In 1858, in the second session of Congress, the Congress started changing definitions behind our back. Not in the usual everyday context, but in special meaning. People versus person and individual. And in the school system, they taught a certain way of thinking to remove us from being recognized as people. Constitutionally, the people of the several states have rights and immunities guaranteed from our Constitution for the United States of America to be recognized by the United States Incorporated, known as the company. Well, in 1937, the company incorporated and the municipal company known as the United States of America, Inc., started playing ping pong with us in the court system when FDR said, from this point on, admiralty courts will be utilized. In admiralty, everything's about commerce, whether it's land commerce, sea commerce, international commerce. Well, if you're not engaged in commerce, and the officer on the side of the road does not allege you behind the steering wheel actually engaged in a commercial act, then it's a false claim and false charge, to which remedies or relief can be granted or not be granted, depending upon how they process the paperwork. But if you don't know the situation with the vocabulary, and you don't know which constitution you're supposed to be hanging out behind and utilizing and why, then you don't have any rights to be recognized. So up in the Constitution room, there is a link to a certain site. I would recommend everyone to go there. We have all kinds of training, lots of information. This will be utilized in every state of the Union across America. Your county will be informed. Your city will be informed, and your state will be informed. But it'll also be up to each and every one of us to bring it into their realization that this actually exists. So as the government of the people, for the people, by the people takes hold, you're going to experience structural changes across the landscape outside your front door. And these structural changes may start to be seen very, very soon. The company known as the, with a little THE, United States, was taken into bankruptcy in 1929 during the era of FDR, and subsequent renditions of bankruptcy have been utilized for nearly a century. The era of bankruptcy hiding is about to end. In late March of 2023, the American Public Law was brought forward in proclamation across America. And prior to that, all the attorneys were called into fraud and treason against the American people. If you wonder why America feels so weird and convoluted, you can in part give thanks to the attorneys and the bankers. Shortly, any bank that is not Basel III compliant will shutter their doors. There's only one bank that is Basel IV compliant at the moment. And we, as Americans, own it. Starting in 1895, our American gold was started to be shipped offshore behind our backs without our permission and our knowledge. We're about 3/4 of the way to recouping our assets owed to us, and we're giving a helping hand to the rest of the world in the process. So far, we've passed 4 public laws, and one of them is the basis for going after bad performing employees who are hired help. It's a wonderful time to be alive. But the question is, are you part of those that are alive? I see we have dwindled down to just the core of us for the team.
It looks that way.
Yep.
You can speak
Like
freely.
I said, this was impromptu and off the cuff.
We have it.
Yay, we got 5. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Not yet. I'm just listening
Okay.
right now. Thank you.
Please turn your volume up a little bit. You're rather muffled.
Okay.
Okay. So in this reclaiming mode that we're in right now, people in general are going to find out the true nature of how the world has been run and by who. And I'm looking forward to the end of December, because with this recoupment, there should be a handing back of assets to people in general, if they're recognized as people and not persons. The original jurisdiction of the Constitution for the United States of America is in play right now. It's the original jurisdictional contract of 1787. Under that contract, we hired our help. Many circumstances under those contracts for hired help are going to be reassessed. Some of it will be renegotiated. But in general, about 90% of what we think of as government is going to be eliminated. And society as a whole is going to have to retool how they think and how they behave, because the American public law, while greatly reduced from the 80 million codes, statutes, and regulations of the corporation, many of our public laws are actually rather draconian and rather simple. You either did or did not do something. And there was either someone harmed or not harmed. There's no such thing as a victimless crime. So there's going to be a lot of disclosure. And don't be surprised if we put a time limit on handing in and converting the Federal Reserve note. There are warehouses full of drug money that we're not going to allow to be brought back into circulation. So when the notice goes out, we'll probably have maybe 45 days to get our pillowcase and our mattresses emptied. And it wouldn't hurt to drag in the cookie jar either. If anybody currently has a 401k or a Roth IRA, I would make haste tomorrow morning and get it converted over into a metals program. Because there's no guarantee on a bail-in. For the last 800 years, there has not been a general jubilee or a grand jubilee experienced. So this is going to be all-encompassing for 800 years of activity. It's going to be immense. Think of what the world felt like in 1958, 1962. Because we have the potential to go back to that era in standing. Not only in prices, but the valuations of everything. Think what it would be like to buy a totally brand new car for $5,000. And for it to be a Cadillac, an Escalade. Buying a house for about $12,000 to $15,000. Gasoline for about 15 to 17 cents a gallon. We're coming into an era where a lot of high tech is going to come rolling out. Multiple fuel motors able to run on hydrogen and water. Air transmission of power, which was originally envisioned nearly a century ago. Think of all the telephone poles and the power lines in the streets being able to be reclaimed, cleaning up the landscape. Huge recycling projects on the horizon. Infrastructure, building bridges and roadways. All because of the restoration of proper government and proper relations between so-called government and their respective peoples. And this will be done on a global scale. This is not a time to fear. This is a time to embrace and look to the future. Sure, we're going to go through rough times. and potholes. But just think what it's going to be like when we come out of this time frame. One of the sheets I posted in the Constitution room deals with the contracts that we all have endured, things we've engaged in without thinking that they were contracts. I would encourage you to go to it, pull it down, print it out, and go through and make a checklist of how your household looks, your personal house. And you'll be able to see how you were entrapped, taken advantage of, and for any of you that happen to have relatives that are veterans, a little piece of 1958 legislation was uncovered, and I'm here to tell you your DD 214 is simply a hall pass that says you don't have to be in the barracks come Monday morning, but when you supposedly were discharged, you were still left in a state of being in reserve. And you could still be called up at any moment if things got so dire that your MSO was required for skill set. And it's true, folks. There's going to be a lot of disclosure of what is owed. There's a letter and a form that should have been told to the veterans as they left the armed services, where it states that they have returned to their status as an American and not lingering in the shadows of the military. As things go forward, I'm going to bring that form into the Constitution room for the vets. We as Americans were not taught our proper relationship when we were encouraged to enlist, whereby we voluntarily set aside our American standing to take on a foreign role in a foreign capacity as a foreign citizen. And how this was able to be snuck underneath our nose, in part, was in 1976 under Jimmy Carter. He removed American history from the school system. So many things were intentionally left in place, creating an assumption that that was American history, and it slanted our worldview. We as Americans are not under any respective constitution. We as Americans are the creator and delegator of all the contracts. But it's which side of the thought pattern that we are taught we as Americans have guarantees by our hired help. And our hired help is supposed to recognize it as constitutional rights to us. But because of misrepresentation and miscategorization of us, they look at us as sovereign citizens. One cannot be the sovereign and be the citizen at the same time. The citizen is subject to the sovereign. He who creates the thing controls the thing. We Americans are not subject to primogeniture or entailments. And those are two words that need to be added to the lexicon of everyone. The difference is between a freehold and a leasehold. And the leasehold comes down to residence. All residents are here in America at the whim of the Residency Act of 1790. You are guests on American soil, providing goods and services to the American people if you can find one. However, if you're actually an American, you are a co-owner of this gin joint called America. And you have the right to a freehold. Freeholds are not subject to primogeniture or entailment, and you have the absolute right to truly hold title to everything. Now, this Big Hats article that I made reference to earlier, in it talks about getting the manufacturer certificate of origin to your car. But in order to get that title, you have to have a right to it. And you need to be a declared, reclaimed American of record. That is what the one-page declaration and the 2 witness testimonies are about. Those are posted in the Constitution room as well. What you're going to do with that one-page declaration is you're going to reclaim the birthright from the state from which you were born on. Texas, Ohio, Florida, California, Kansas. That's what you put on, I think it's either paragraph 2 or paragraph 3 that you're going to be reclaiming yourself as. And then you take that instrument and go find yourself a notary public and go get it notarized. That's step 1. Step 2 are the witness testimonies. You're going to get 2 passport pictures. You're going to put it on the witness testimony. You're going to find 2 people who've known you for 7 years. And you're going to ask them, would you please go get this notarized for me? Do me a favor. And all they're going to do when they go to the notary is say, you see this picture? I know this character in this picture. I know this character by this name, and I've known them 7 years or more. That's all they're doing. And basically they're saying you do exist, much like the M&M twins. You do exist. And then you're going to find the state assembly from the state that you live in currently. And there's a web page for a contact. Go fill that out, ask your respective assembly to get a hold of you. And when they do, grab your birth certificate. Someone known as a recording secretary is going to see that you actually have one. They may make a scanned copy of it, process your one-pager and your 2 witness testimonies, and you're in like Flynn, reclaiming yourself as a recognized American. Welcome home. It's not hard, but if you don't know what to do and how to do it, you can end up chasing your tail. And over the last 20 years, it has become so much easier for people to do this. And don't be afraid to do this. When you do this process, you actually come under the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, as guarantees owed to you, and certain portions of the Mayflower Compact and a bunch of other stuff that you'll learn about in the course of time. You'll have the right to hold true title to your house by way of land patent or land grant. Land grants are recognized on the eastern seaboard, land patents across the western part of the country. And possession is 9/10 of the law. And if you have a right to possession, you have the right to enjoyment. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Recognized in a very old document that a lot of people aren't taught to actually read. This is why they've removed script or cursive writing from schools. If you can't master the writing, you can't read the old document called the Declaration of Independence. And if you don't know what made you an American, how can you claim to be an American? Know who you are. And there's this old book, it makes some kind of reference, unto thyself be true. How can you be true to yourself if you don't know who you are, what you are, and how you got here? I'm going to open up for questions. Anybody got a question?
Jim, I don't have any questions, but I'm just totally fascinated on everything that you're teaching us, and it's so much to learn. And I am, and I appreciate it. I just wanted to tell you that.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And I realize since the advent of the computer, we've all been mentally rewired in how we think of the world. So imagine a salt and pepper shaker. The salt shaker is the salt of the world. That's the American people. The pepper shaker is the King of England and his contracts. So if you take a paper napkin and put the little peak up, and on one side of the napkin print of, and on the other side print for, and put the side of the napkin that says for against the salt shaker. Put the of next to the pepper shaker. Now you'll see the real relationship of the constitutions between the Americans and the King of England. Do that same word for and of to a second napkin. On the second napkin, put the 4 next to the salt. Put it over the top of the pepper shaker. Utilize a coffee cup, something along that line. And that's the contract with the Vatican for municipal services. And that contract is the Constitution of the United States of America, Inc. The United States, Inc. and the United States of America, Inc. were incorporated companies. The American government is unincorporated and always has. That is the government of the people, for the people, by the people, staffed by people. And that is the government you have an inherent right to. And it's being rebuilt in all 50 states and all 3,000 plus counties across the country. Here pretty soon, I believe, the American peacetime flag is going to be replacing the contractor wartime flag. And when that happens, you're going to see a change of the red and white stripes, going from horizontal to vertical. The flag that everyone has grown up with, has been accustomed to seeing in parades, is a wartime military flag. Well, the real America has been at peace since the early 1800s. I believe it's 1814. And there has never been a properly congressionally declared war by America since then. It has always been a declared commercial mercenary interest action. And behind every action are bankers. Well, this merry-go-round of war is about to come to a happy stop. Think of living in a time of prosperity and peace. What will that feel like? What will it look like? And what will you do to help bring this about? I share what I share not because of me, but because I want to make a better world for future generations. So I am 67, and a little over a year ago, I was made a great grandfather. I'm the father of 3, grandfather to 8, great grandfather to 1. I don't care what tongue comes out of your mouth. We all have something in common. We laugh, we cry, we hurt, we bleed, and we hope for the better future for all of our family, our children, our grandkids, our friends, our families, our neighbors, our communities. So let's unite in what's common to us. Again, I'm going to open up for questions.
I have a question. Will
Mm-hmm.
will there be a recording about the beginning instructions you were talking about that we need to do to help ourselves?
I have made 2 prior recordings, and I've posted the documents in the Constitution room. You can go up there and download them.
Thank you very
These
much.
recordings will be made available where you can download and rerun them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Silver, you mentioned earlier in some detail about recognizing our sovereignty. I don't think that's the right word. Our independence with our driver's license and things. And I wondered if you could talk for just a little bit about when is the proper time to start exerting our new authority, and what to expect from officials that we come, or the employees, I should refer them to, the other employees that we come into contact with, perhaps even in circumstances where we're being pulled over and given a ticket for not having for having expired tags on our car, or a light that's out or something like that.
Okay. Well, in part, the entire system was built around a vocabulary that was spoon-fed to each and every one of us in the public education system. The education system is something I joke at because I consider myself semi-educated, and most of my education I have had to obtain outside of the classroom, because that spoon feeding that we all experienced was spoon fed and dug up from the outhouse, if you can imagine what that means. So our vocabulary coming out of the school system took us into a cattle chute operation to put us into subject slavery. The legal system, which is not necessarily the lawful system, works on admissions and confessions of the very words you choose to work with that come out of your mouth. And if you do not understand or comprehend that this scenario is being utilized against you, how can you object to it? So in recognition, you have new vocabulary to master. The scenario is part of what we call the dead baby scam. So everyone has a birth certificate and they think it is them, when in reality it is not. And there's so much about the dead baby scam and the straw man out there on the internet, and various other people are teaching about it. But it is the basis that is utilized to remove you from your American birthright by an act of non-disclosure and entrapment in the hospital, and you're just barely getting your breath. And within 3 weeks, there is a registration date on the birth certificate. On that date, the name on the instrument was created as a trust entity, and you were declared dead on paper. Your citizenship was changed to a British subject citizen by non-disclosure to your mother, who was never disclosed that she was waiving your American birthright on your behalf. That's quite the thing to wrap your mind around. But when you do this one pager and 2 witness testimonies, you're going to be correcting what transpired shortly after you were born. Until you master the comprehension of being for hire on the road and not hired on the road, you will not be able to properly express it. So this is going to take some effort, some homework. You're going to have to mentally role play. Read it, write it, speak it into existence so that it becomes a part of you. In the meantime, there's a historic body called the Federation of States that is now working on our behalf in many states of the Union to inform and to force change from on top coming down, and then we who are knowledgeable are forcing change from below, driving it up. In about a year, I do believe there will not be a jurisdiction on the side of the road that will not be aware. Because we're making it so uncomfortable for them, they're not going to be able to hide behind this, at least for not much longer. It's now recognized that the various state-of-state corporate entities have intentionally withheld certain kinds of information and training in their respective police academies. Whether it's the county officer or the state patrol, they don't know what they don't know. And some of them are getting a very rude awakening to it. That in their line of work, they're not recognized as Americans. They do not have any attachment or claim to the Declaration of Independence. They, in their working capacity, are working for a foreign corporation and being systematically scapegoated. They don't know they're working for a company created under foreign law and under a court case called the Clarefield Doctrine. They have no immunities for what they do when it actually is being done to an American improperly. The officer on the side of the road carries full, complete commercial liability for his actions, and the county corporation, the city corporation, the state corporation cannot grant them immunity. This is going to cause a shift in how many of our hirelings start to behave. You're going to see systematic attitude adjustments. But you'll need to learn how to handle yourself, handle certain documentation, how to get it filed, where to get it filed, and in part, this Big Hats Off article covers much of that. I hope that helps with what you get to look forward to.
It does. Are there any other educational materials that you suggest that we seek and search, even videos?
There's some video footage out there of various people that have gone through this process, done certain court actions to correct the presumption that they're subject to the Federal Motor Vehicle Highway Safety Act. Now, the act is wrapped around all commercial rigs. Any car, any truck that has what is considered a normal plate is deemed to be for hire upon the road. And your end goal is to come out from underneath that situation. So you're going to need a new kind of plate or placard. You're going to have to produce the documentation that allows you to do that. And that requires the state, DMV to recognize the situational change in title and position. A lot of this federal highway safety is very proper. We don't want someone who holds a CDL or a company that has them to not be safe, to play by good rules on the road. We don't want them to run over grandma inadvertently because they don't maintain the brakes. We don't want them to do 120 miles an hour down the highway. This is where having uniform, common sense rules makes sense. But just because you leave your house and go down to the store to get a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread and a pound of butter doesn't mean you're required in that scenario to have a license. So if you're not an Uber or a Lyft operator, not a taxi cab operator, not a delivery truck operator, do not utilize a CDL for 60 feet of semi-truck. Do not haul tankers and hazardous disposable materials under certain situation. You may not be actually required to have a license for the exercise of common right to utilize the road. But getting people to recognize, do I do something that requires a license? Do I fly a commercial jet airplane? Am I hired to be a gasoline tanker driver? That's why that list of cleaning up your house exists. It's a thought-provoking tool to get people to recognize, oh, I do have a contract. I do engage in a regulation activity. So then when people step away from that activity, they're not utilizing the license just to go to the store, just to go down to the park and enjoy a picnic with the wife or girlfriend or the kids. Being able to shift your thinking. Am I or am I not required in this situation? We're not taught to think this way. But it is going to be required going forward for people to reconsider what they're doing, how they're doing. In some ways, you're going to end up taking more control of your life, stepping forward with a little bit more self-control and responsibility. And a tad bit more active participation in not letting someone else do the heavy lifting of life. Especially in this government of the people, for the people, by the people, which requires participation to have it. Can anybody tell me who said this quote? We have given you a Republican form of government if you can keep it. Can anybody answer that question?
I think it was Benjamin Franklin.
That's correct. A Republican form of government is not a democracy. The company known as the United States it may function in such a capacity, but how did it get here? During Abraham Lincoln's time frame, a business entity was smuggled into America out of Edinburgh, Scotland, called the United States of America Incorporated. It is an English Scottish Commonwealth corporation. And it was brought into America to sidestep the constitutional contracts of 1789 with a substitution and fraud scheme. That's what all of us have experienced for the last 6+ generations. It's all we've ever known. This corporate substitution is also how they have defrauded other countries across the globe. We're not the only ones that have gone through this, folks. And how you participate in it is because you do not recognize it, and you do not recognize your position in this whole thing. William Shakespeare said all the world is a stage. So who's on stage but actors? And if you're on the stage called life, what role do you play in it? What hat do you wear? Butcher, baker, candlestick maker, chief cook, bottle washer, brother, sister, bailee, bailor, authorized representative, donor, donee, trustee, trustor, private banker. How about warrant officer? And you've been doing this heavy lifting on someone else's behalf for free. That's right, free. With the bankruptcy of the United States Corporation and gold and silver having been removed from circulation, and we were removed off the gold standard, there has not been something called money in circulation for a good long time. What we have been using, known as a Federal Reserve note, is a privately issued military script as an IOU. And in reality, Popeye and Wimpy, the cartoons, this was part of a disclosure of, I'll gladly pay you tomorrow for a hamburger today. I will give you an IOU for tomorrow if I can have a hamburger. Federal Reserve note is a debt instrument. It's not money. So when all the world goes back to a gold-based standard, we're going to go back to assets, and we're all going to be required to rethink what we have comprehended to be banking, because it's going to be a very prosperous time. There will be institutions known as prosperity institutions that come out. We're going to live in an era of great abundance, not scarcity, not lack. Any questions?
In the absence of somebody else raising their hand and asking, I'll ask you to discuss frauds, people that are coming out of the woodwork, seems now, offering these services to help us reclaim our name, that are actually, in fact, fraudsters willing to take away the power of your name and lay claim to it for their own selfish goals. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, okay. Now that is a sticky wicket. We have groups out here that are claiming to have power, claiming to have authority. They're offering to help you reclaim your name using very expensive services and processes. and willing to take advantage of you. Now, there is a language context called parse syntax. Parse syntax is a proprietary owned system, and we Americans simply use simple, common, everyday English. Nothing fancy, nothing schmancy, just plain English. Our yeses are yes, our nos are nos, and we don't hide behind legalese. The last American congressionally authorized dictionary is the Webster's Dictionary of 1856. If it ain't done in plain English, it ain't real. The Bouvier's dictionary is the dictionary of the land jurisdiction. The word law means land, air, and water, and they are 3 jurisdictions. Blacks deals with the water or the sea jurisdiction and legalese, and it only applies to dead fictional entities called persons. Now, if people help you utilize a correction utilizing proprietary, trademarked, and patented technology of language, they can take control of you, and you. So why do I say you, and you? Well, back in the day, Abraham Lincoln brought into America Roman Civil Code. Roman Civil Code is the Roman Empire Code. And under the Roman Empire language construction, capitis diminutia maximus is any name expressed in all caps letters. So look at your mail. How does your mail come? Is it all caps or is it upper lower case? Does it have red meter mail or black meter mail markings on it? If the name in the mail comes to a 2-letter style of state, it's a fictional business entity coming to a 2-letter fictional business state. Like the state of Oklahoma, state of Illinois. Now, there are 2 versions of these business entities, one utilizing upper lowercase, one in all caps. So you can have the upper lowercase state of Illinois and the all caps version of the state of Illinois. And the all caps is a municipal corporation. Learning about your respective relationships to the male entities is what has been hidden from you. So you have a first and middle given name. You have a family last name. Well, in the mail, you can have a first name, middle initial, and last name. Or you can have first name, middle initial with a P or a period, and then your last name. In either style, upper and lower or all caps. But learning what they are is not taught to you in public education on purpose. We have a procedure for being able to reclaim control of the male entity utilizing all those styles of spelling. So Marcia Enriquez, I'm going to use you as an example. We're going to do a little role play. Would you please participate with me? Now, I am looking through Sailboat magazine. I see this lovely 40-foot twin-masted sailboat listed for sale in Puerto Rico. And on the stern of the boat, it says, the Enriquez. So I buy a plane ticket, get on an airplane, land in Puerto Rico, and I walk the deck. I go below deck. I really fall in love with the Enriquez. And I buy it. Now, the Enriquez is running a Puerto Rican flag in the Commonwealth. I buy it. I do all the paperwork. I happen to live in Washington State. So I'm going to take the sailboat through the Panama Canal, sail it up the West Coast, and bring it into Juan de Fuca, around Tacoma and Seattle, Washington. And by the time I get up here, it happens to be late November, and the weather's turning cold. It's wet. It's raining. The prime sailing weather is gone, and I learned that in order to put 40-foot of boat out there, the moorage fee is astronomical. And I don't see good sailing for like 6 months. So rather than forking out the nose for moorage fees, I'm going to dry dock the Enriquez, haul it out of the water, park it in a little stall. It's going to cost me $25 a month until next summer, instead of paying by the foot. Well, along comes the U.S. Coast Guard and informs me, hey, mister, you have to reflag that sailboat, and you need a Coast Guard inspection, and you need to license and register and get tabs and everything else. Well, I just politely tell the Coast Guard, well, I'm going to haul it out of the water, and I'm going to worry about all that next year. Now, all those different styles of names, we're going to teach you how to haul them out of the water, put them in dry dock in the land jurisdiction, and then treat them like tennis shoes. Now, Marcia, you're going to end up with Skechers, Reeboks, Nikes, and you're even going to get a pair made by Gucci. How do you feel about that? And if anybody wants to borrow a pair of your shoes, they're going to have to pay you handsomely. No one gets to walk in your shoes for free. We'll teach you that too. We'll teach you how to take control of many aspects of your life. But are you brave enough and willing to step up to the plate to govern yourself, to be true to yourself? That is the question. We'll help you with that. We'll help you walk out from underneath your fear. And when you do that, the clouds will part, the sun will shine, the breeze will come in, and the birds will chirp and sing. It'll be a new day. So fear not, my wayward, weary travelers. Welcome to the path. So I encourage you to take your first step and come home.
Is this the right time to thank you and turn it back to Missy Oki and RJ?
Yep, we can do that.
All right. Missy Oki, it's up to you to push the button.
Thank you, guys, and thank you, Jim, again. Bye-bye.
Have a good rest of your evening and be safe out there. Play nice. And smile a lot. You'll keep a lot of people guessing what you're up to.
Thank
Good
you,
evening.
Jim. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Salty.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you so much. Thank you.
Anybody need to talk about anything with me while I'm on the call? Maybe everybody's gone. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.